Hey everybody, welcome back to the Woodruff cast. I have got a great discussion for you today. Before I start that, a couple things I want to talk about. Number one, again, thank you to all of my paid subscribers here. You guys, gals, make all of this possible. And thank you. Sincerely, really appreciate it. It keeps everything here humming. Um, Also, quickly, I've noticed in the media that Substack is getting like a snowball effect, and I'm seeing almost every day like a new influx of people, some unknown, some very well known, some fleeing traditional media, legacy media and all finding a home here, which kind of reminds me of the old days of the internet when it was just a fun, relaxing, inspiring, curiosity generating experience. So, thank you to Substack. Happy to have landed here 4 years ago. It's been good to me. So today's topic is very Neptunian. Um, and I'll say this about clothing and fashion that this is one way I know the veracity of my own horoscope, which is very Neptune colored. My sun's in the 12th house, my moon's conjunct Neptune, Mars is in Pisces in the 8th house. And then water everywhere, pretty much throughout my chart. And what I mean by all that is ever since I was a kid, I was drawn to the clothing, textures, materials. My mom used to tell me when I could start kind of maneuvering around on my own, one of my favorite things to do was folding napkins and handkerchiefs. And then when I got older, she started to let me like iron them out and stuff. Crazy kids. But it was kind of a front runner to as I got older and began having the agency to pick my own clothing. Um, as I tell Dan in this talk we did, I would plan out everything I was going to wear to school the night before, sometimes to the point where I would get up and sort of lay out on the floor, kind of like those crime scene tapes, where they've taken the body and then they leave this marker. But I would just make sure I had the right kind of ensemble going. So how was that shirt gonna go with those pants and stuff like that? Cuckoo, but fun. Anyway, I've never lost that enthusiasm for clothing. And as you'll hear, like listening to Dan today, it's really not about fashion per se, as like being some trendsetter or like forefront of some movement. It's more about what color and texture and fabric and arranging does to your mood and your psyche. And then also we're telegraphing things about ourselves constantly by the clothing we wear. And as the Jungian astrologer Liz Green talks about fashion in relating it to Neptune, she makes this connection between fashion and these very deep longings and the dream field from which fashion emerges. It's impossible to capture and bottle or predict fashion. As soon as, you know, fashion sort of gets corralled by Madison Avenue and then makes its way down into Walmart or whatever, by that point, a whole other phase of fashion and a whole other set of dreams have moved into place that people are tactilely interacting with by the choices they make to get dressed in the morning. So today I'm talking with Dan Snyder, who is the founder of Corridor, hands down my favorite brand that I get my clothing from, and have been fortunate enough to work with Dan doing an astrology column every quarter for his journal that is over on Corridor. So before I bring Dan on or our discussion, I forgot to ask him how he came up with such an interesting name like Corridor for his brand and his line of clothing. And I found out later that because at the time when he was going around learning how to sew, and this is after leaving the FBI, this is like a true Scorpio, journey or odyssey. Went, learned IT, computer languages, went from there, like, FBI, IBM, and then got fascinated with making his own shirts, taught himself how to sew, and started selling shirts out of his backpack to his friends. But anyway, as he was traveling to New York on that Northeast bus corridor, up and down, checking out the fabric houses, doing this, studying on the bus, his tests that he needed to do, for his day job. He was inspired by that name, Corridor. And that's how Corridor happened. And it's time to meet him now. So, everybody, I'd like to introduce you to one of my favorite people, Mr. Dan Snyder. And how do you feel about your horoscope being up on my website?
Good.
You're okay with that? Because you had
Yeah.
the chart is so unusual, which is one of the reasons I wanted to talk with you today. Because I think you're such a great example of someone with a chart like yours where the entire solar system is in one small segment that the way I see that expressed in your life and your life choices, it really fits well, this concentration. It reminds me of this thing that Joan Rivers said once. She goes, don't look to your left, don't look to your right, stay in your lane.
Yeah.
Would you say that that's a good description of your style?
Yep.
So, because these talks I do with folks, I like to explore creativity and what would you say is, you know, made you well suited to being a clothing designer?
Mm, so I guess I won't be political in this conversation. I'll just speak frankly. I think that I was born with it. I think I was given the gift that my mother gave me.
Yeah.
Um, my mother is an artist. Her father was an artist. My aunt's an artist. And they're just really creative people that can just do it. The other side of it is that my last name is Snyder on my mother's side and on my father's side. And Snyder means tailor. So even though it skipped my parents' generation, I think there have been a lot of people who have worked in clothes. And so I just can do it.
So innate,
Yeah, it's just
innate
innate.
talent that you
Yeah.
brought with you. Though your odyssey was interesting in that you went from like IT, FBI, what amidst all that was just your hobby that you had for, because I remember an interview you just talked about you wanted to learn how to sew. So you took a course. when did it like take over for you that you were going to step out of this other kind of career path?
Well, I went to night school to become a tailor, and became interested in shirt making because it possessed all the skills you needed to become a tailor, and I just loved making stuff. This was the first time I found a craft that I could just do. As a kid, I drew a lot, I painted a lot, and now I'm doing that stuff again. But I don't know. I think something around my teens and 20s, masculinity beat the art out of me, and I had to come back to it in my own way. Um, and so was I was a contractor at the FBI, and I was wanted to switch to CIA, and so I went to grad school where they were recruiting. And during that time, I had an internship at the NYPD in their counterterrorism division. And at grad school, people encouraged me to make a brand out of the clothes that I had made. I had already made my whole wardrobe, and people were like, "Yeah, you should try to do this." And I had never been involved in business. I never wanted to have a brand, but I found myself in New York. So I started going to the garment district every evening and started knocking on doors. And by the end of that summer, I had a couple samples of things that I liked. And I just, I just totally, by the end of the summer, I just like totally took a left turn and decided I wasn't going to do anything on that timeline and I was going to do something else.
So, in a way, to me, as an astrologer, that's a real representative of your chart because if you look at most horoscopes for most people, if you look at it as a mandala, you the planets tend to be and the lights, the sun and the moon tend to be all over the place. And then your chart has just that one section of the pie, just this parade of all the planets. So it's like a one focus drive that I think I remember in an interview you talked about feeling lucky in your life. And I think that kind of concentration sort of attracts luck because the person isn't dispersed all over the place, which isn't bad. I mean, that's some people's life path is to be going here, there, and trying this, that, this is a. So you have that concentration like that, and then that focus. But what interests me most about your story is that there wasn't like an overriding theme in your life, like, oh, I've got to be this top designer, or you just, you liked making shirts, so you went to a tailoring class and whatnot. Were you able to wear the clothes you were making in the like working for the FBI?
So no, they were all like just casual shirts. I mean, like I would go to like Joanne Fabrics and I would buy fabric and I would make shirts. Anything you'd see on the website today is something like I would have made in my apartment. Um, and so, yeah, it just, when I found this, it was like I just felt this pull, this like hook inside me that just yanked me. And I just had never let go of that.
Mhm. You've talked about items being imbued with, personal essence or whatever. I think this is something that I don't know how it is on the East Coast. I imagine there's more sensitivity and savvy about fashion, though in the US, it tends to be, with the majority of people, it's kind of seen as frivolous fashion. Like, what does it really matter? Like, but I see fashion as something that tells all these secrets about where a culture is moving and what their ideals and their fantasies are, right? How do
Yeah.
you relate to that idea?
I mean, you, no matter what you're wearing, you are wearing someone's idea and you are broadcasting their idea. Whether
Right.
people buy into it or not, they're still a walking billboard for someone's idea.
Right.
So everyone is participating in other people's ideas, other people's vibrations, how it was made. They're carrying that their concept. So it's even though people may consider it frivolous, it's not.
Well, and also just choosing colors to wear. Like, why does somebody choose a red shirt over a green shirt? Like that, to me, all of that has some kind of meaning to it,
Of
even if it's
course,
not conscious.
of course. I mean, light and sound is all vibration. Like if you believe in spirituality, great. If you believe in physics, great. They're the same. We can all agree that this color has a vibration and this note has a vibration. This and they are equivalent. So you are wearing a vibration. What you're wearing has a sound. And the colors together, those colors have a harmony. It has a chord. So you're wearing this chord, this sound. So that's what you're bringing through the universe.
I'm going to throw a quote at you and get your take on it. Okay. Uh, okay, this is from Karl Lagerfeld, who was quite a character. He said, sweatpants are a sign of defeat. You lost control of your life, so you bought some sweatpants. What,
Mhm.
how do you react? How do you react to that notion?
Well, the body's a temple, right? And a temple likes to be adorned. So you can adorn your temple or you can unadorn your temple. And, you know, you could take it as you will. I'm not in the business of judging people for what they wear. That's not what I do. Um, that's not my work. Um, but I do believe in in amplifying one's own beauty, energetically or aesthetically.
Yeah. This is one of the things that's common to people with a lot of water in their horoscope. Like you have all the Scorpio and then you've got a Cancer rising, is they are known for like impeccable taste. They really have this kind of inner Geiger counter within themselves that know how to arrange things, juxtapose things that create an effect on their environment, right?
Hmm.
How do you, does that resonate with you, that idea, like having that innate skill and a sense of taste?
Yeah, taste is innate. It is something that people are born with. Um, some people care about it, some people don't, and it can be learned. It can be refined. Um, Taste has a lot to do with harmony,
Hmm.
right? And
Hmm.
so if you arrange things, you're constantly trying to harmonize things in a way that feels still natural, that still feels like it's interpreted in the eyes of the universe. The universe would agree that this is a harmony that we all enjoy. And so that's kind of like where I go is I enjoy harmony. So is that good taste? Is that a sense of harmony? Is that a sense of balance? That's what I'm looking for. But I'm not looking for perfection either.
I think there's a
Yeah.
difference between harmony and perfection. A, a,
Yeah,
a big, a big one. First of all, I don't think perfection is attainable, but
it's
people
not.
have this crazy notion. Um, when you get up in the morning, well, I'll just talk about myself. When I wake up in the morning, and I've been like this since I was a kid, it was very bizarre. Like when I would when I would go to bed at night before, a school day, I would start cogitating in my mind like what I was going to wear the next morning, and then just get up out of bed and then, had, my attire, picked out for myself. How is that for you? Like when you get up in the morning and you're going to get dressed, do you just grab stuff from your closet or do you feel your mood and then feel your way into it? How does that work for you?
Well, I'm particular, but I grab something from my closet. But if I won't just wear anything, it has to feel right. It has to feel like me. I won't leave the house until I wear something that feels like how I feel. Um, but by this point, I like a certain set of colors. I know certain colors go in a certain way. Um, and so I just pretty much grab and go. But it depends on what I'm doing. If I'm going out, I do like to push myself a little bit, like push myself into a way that in a way of the collection that maybe I wouldn't typically wear because I want to see how the outliers of the collection are reacted to in real life.
Right.
And I'd like to see how it lives. And that's so, when the new season comes out, I basically get everything, and then I wear the outliers of it and see what happens, see the reactions I get, and see how it feels on myself.
I had there was a great line in a interview you did with GQ, and they described your line as doesn't care too much about fashion, but still cares about looking good. Would you describe your clothes that way still?
Yeah, I think that because fashion is trend, you
Exactly.
know, so then you're at the forefront, and it means whatever you're wearing, you can't wear it in 2 years. What everyone's closet, it should probably change over almost completely every 3 years because the fits will change, things will get worn out. Clothes aren't forever. There was a movement in like 2012 called like Buy It for Life, where everyone was buying like raw denim, these big boots, and
Right.
the whole philosophy of the brand was you're going to buy this once and you're going to wear it forever. And people are buying very expensive blazers, very expensive jeans, and that was the justification. And none of that stuff is worn today. Maybe a couple Red Wing boots survived the 10 years to this present moment, but it's just not the way it is. People want to feel fresh and they want to feel different because they've changed. So it's fashion to me is how can you present in a way that isn't so much of the moment that it feels like you're trend chasing, but you're still part of the cultural zeitgeist.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I think living where you do, do you still live in Brooklyn?
Hmm.
I think you're in a fortunate environment there that I think speaks to your your work and your designs. Where I live, it's kind of depressing. Maybe it's I don't know, the Northwest weather, but basically you see men, always in gray or brown or jeans. Um, and even shirts, which should offer a lot more variety, it's, very plain, safe, things like that. And where I live on this island, because I pretty much wear just your clothing, because,
Thank you.
before we started working together, like with my astrology thing with Corridor, I was buying your stuff because as soon as I discovered you online, it was all my water and my chart, I think, aligned with all the water in your chart. I was like, this guy has got it going on with,
Thank you.
but what do you think of that? Like how do men, I'm bringing up men because it's such a strange topic in the culture
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. But I think it has a lot to do with expressiveness. Like how comfortable do you feel with yourself that you can express yourself through your clothing? How comfortable are you with your masculinity or your femininity that you're willing to express it with your outward appearance? And if you aren't that comfortable with that side of yourself, then you're not willing to express that.
Hmm.
And so I think there has a lot to do with the ability to feel free and to be on display and to feel beautiful as a man that can be tamped and that is often tamped in society,
What did you say? It's often tamped?
like tamped down.
Tamped down. Yes. Yeah, definitely.
I mean, the thing that appeals to me is like this early 70s, kind of late 60s energy that felt a little bit more hand done, a little bit more colorful, a little less serious. And all the kind of culture around it, whether it be um, like Black Mountain College, that sort of hippie
Yep.
aesthetic, but finer. It's not just psychedelic, but it's mixed with real art. Um, that to me is very, very appealing. That's where I find myself going to. And yeah, I try not to work in a converse relationship to anything. I'm just trying to stay on my
Stay in your
path.
lane.
Yeah, just stay true to what I believe in. You
Hmm.
can't I often say to people that like I think about my own life and my own design as like a racehorse. A racehorse has blinders on, right? It can look around. It must look around. It must know where the other horses are because it has to jostle, it has to move. But the focus of the racehorse is to focus on its own stride. And that's what I try to do.
I think given the transits to your horoscope now, and I didn't realize this till I started doing some research for our talk today, but I didn't realize you have like 170 stores going now. Is that correct?
I sell to like 170 stores. We have our own, we have six of our own retail.
And that's California and then East Coast.
Yeah, just LA and New York. So four in New York and two in LA.
The reason I'm asking about this is because in your transits right now, Saturn is climbing up to the very top of your chart. And usually that corresponds with somebody like being at the very top of their game, where everything that they've worked on through their life, all the skill sets they've developed, not even just related to fashion and design, but other aspects of your life that you've fine-tuned. It's like all of that comes to this culmination when Saturn goes, like for you, when Saturn moves into Aries, which will be at the end of May, then that you're kind of at this point where you can consolidate and hold what you have together or like really like reach out. And that's why I was curious, like your attitude about going global and whatnot. Like how do you hold that as far as your ambition and your dreams go?
Well, it's funny that you bring this up because this is like something I've been talking a lot about. We've been like approached by private equity to like go for this huge, huge thing. And I've turned it down. I want to stay independent. I want to make beautiful product. I want to remain an artist. And that's my freedom is more important to me than um, some grand ambition of having 70 stores. I think my lifestyle matters more. So, the way I've elected to do this is to, you know, perhaps it's the easier path, maybe it's the harder path. I haven't quite decided yet. But for now, we're going to hold tight and build this thing from this level and try to treat it like an organic farm that doesn't have fertilizer on it, that can still grow in a mindful way because I think I owe it to it to
Being true to that original impetus that brought you there.
Yeah, and I think we've gotten pretty far on its own accord. And I don't think there's anything wrong with taking money, taking investors.
Well, I just remember something you said to someone, uh, and you had gone, I believe, to your dad and said, you know, I can you give me a loan or whatever? And then he kind of looked at what you were doing and he was like, no, I don't think so. And then you later, or I don't know how soon after that, really saw that as one of the best events that could have happened for you. And when you said that, I was like, oh God, I know exactly what he means. Because when you're suddenly beholden to someone else, then there are things, there's shits in the mix. Like,
Hmm.
so, I was like, yes. And I think another person, another type might have been, disappointed or let down or felt my dreams aren't gonna, and you just like hunkered in, just kept going. That was such
Just
a
got to
great
keep
story.
going. Thanks.
That was
Thanks.
really, so you still have that attitude now, just the happiness of, your team, the kind of
Yeah.
control you have.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to make something real. And I feel like there's making something really real takes time. And I have time. So, like, why don't I just try? So I think like we're just like trying to stabilize what we have now. Like we have a great team, we have great stores, we have great partners, and just like really refining what we have and then pushing forward. Will this be a big brand someday? Maybe. I'm gonna let it happen the way it wants to happen. In a way, I actually think that Corridor is its own entity, right? It's all this energy that so many people have put into. It's its own thing. It has remnants of my soul in it, but it's also its own thing. So I also serve it. And so when I made that decision, I tried to listen to it.
Tell me, if you don't mind, a bit about your philosophical, spiritual uh, approach. I remember in an interview you did, you mentioned like Annie Besant and her work with
Hmm.
theosophy. I
Hmm.
believe it was like the thought form watercolors and stuff like that. And I was
Yeah.
like, wow, this is another reason I jibe with this fellow. But yeah, say a little bit about that part of your life.
I mean this.
There it is. Yes. All right. Oh, yeah, that is a killer book.
Yeah. Well, I think it goes back to what I was saying about colors and energy, colors and vibration. What are we trying to say, when we speak, when we express ourselves in art, when we express ourselves in clothing? And there's a lot of work that was done, a lot of color work that was connected to mysticism
Mhm.
that informs my work. And that's where I try to work from, more of innate mystical level, with giving people a way, a channel that they can work through the clothes. And there's some other people that I think that were doing it, maybe that weren't so overt about it. Um, Turner, JMW Turner, whatever he
Kandinsky.
was, Kandinsky as well. I mean, all these theosophists were attempting to do this, and that's what essentially I'm trying to do with the clothes, is give people a touch of the unseen uh, in garment form.
I remember because we had met a couple times about going over your chart, and I remember because I followed your line so closely, and I remember when Uranus got into deeper into Taurus and set off your Mercury Saturn conjunction, which really is a symbol for the way the mind's constructed and kind of working in this orderly fashion. But then I remember like the psychedelia came in to your designs at that time. it was just so apparent to me that I saw it as an astrologer as that Uranian part coming in, which is kind of a planet that pulls from the future and kind of brings it into the now. But then that same thing you could say was happening in the counterculture movement back in the 60s when that planet was so active with
Hmm.
the hippies and psychedelia and paganism was back and all of that. Um, was did you feel that was like a really significant shift in your design then? Like going more the psychedelic, the paisleys, the color blend, all of that?
Yeah, I just let myself go there.
That's so
And
cool. I love that.
I and I just said, fuck it. I'm just gonna let it rip. And I also like around that time I started having more control because, you know, to be a fashion designer is also you also have to learn, it takes time to like learn the techniques. And it took me a long time to know how to do knitwear, to really know how to do woven fabrics, how to weave fabrics, how to manipulate fabrics, how to juxtapose fabrics to create more dimension. And it took a long time to actually have that skill set,
Mm,
like a painter really knowing how to mix color, how to use their brush. And so once I really had that sense of control, even though it's a huge paintbrush, I just said, let me really try to paint. And
right.
that's where I went.
I think that's a quality that makes art really gripping or original is audacity. I think when a person feels versed enough with what they're doing that they can say, fuck it, I learned all this now. I'm going to jump, or, the audacity of just going off with your following the gut or whatever. I know when you started, you were working with fabric manufacturers in the US, and I think you had mentioned it seemed kind of too hemmed in for you with what the options were. Talk about going to India and Peru and like what was the difference and what was it easier, culturally challenging, but satisfying artistically? Like what?
In the beginning, I was making things in New York and I was buying fabric from Japan, mostly stock fabric or fabrics that people had designed. And then I went to India and then I realized that actually the options were endless. It was as far as I could spread my mind. And in some cases, I spread my mind too far where the fabric just fell apart and we had horrible damages, but they'll make whatever you want. And it allowed me to really express myself because I found a group of people that would make fabric for me and make it together. And it just allowed me just to be much more creative. Same thing in Peru. And that's why knitwear has become a big part of our business is because knitwear is sculptural. It
Mhm.
moves with you. You can play more with dimension. It lays in a certain way. And yeah, so it's just given us I think the most important part of corridor is color. Like
Yeah.
that's what I'm interested in. Like color. How do you make color move? What do you want to say with color? And when you work in India, they understand color. You can
Hmm.
work with color there, and the same in Peru. And that's why I've continued to put myself there and go there. And yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I whenever it's fall and winter coming up, I'm always excited because I know Corridor's going to be doing all the knitwear, which to me is just so stellar,
Thank you.
what you've been doing there. So, couple things in closing. What would be your advice to someone? And not just like going into fashion, though you can talk about that, But this idea of audacity, trusting yourself, all of that as an artist or writer or gardener or a chef or whatever, what advice would this super Scorpio give?
I would say, I would say trust your gut because I believe, I believe in the gut and the heart.
Hmm.
And I think that the brain is a useful computer that is required for decision making, but the body knows, if the body's connected to the unconscious. It's close, more closely connected to the unconscious. So what you feel energetically, what you feel in your gut, in your heart, is going to lead you to your highest place. And that's the advice I would give to people. Trust your gut, trust your heart.
Do you feel that you'll like someday like sit down and write a book about all this? Like, does that move inspire you at all to leave like something? I mean, you're quite young still, but like your legacy, would there be something of that ilk other than your line of clothing, which speaks for itself? But
Frederick, do you remember a couple years ago you told me to read Faust?
oh yeah,
I'm finally reading it.
yeah. Okay. Is that the answer to the question?
No, it's not. But I think Goethe, it took him 40 years to write that book,
Right.
that
I
it's
see your point. Yeah.
complete the whole thing. But I think that I've always wanted to write a novel. I think there's a book in me,
Yeah, I do too.
but it's not I have a long way to go. I feel like I just turned 40. I just got my feet underneath me.
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
just it
you're
just
moving.
happened.
Yeah, you're moving towards your Uranus opposition at 42. And that's often when a person they're they come face to face with the different parts of themselves, and then they kind of decide, are they going to take this part with me going forward, or am I going to leave this behind and jump off like in a whole new direction? Not that it means a career disaster or change, but there is generally with that transit at 42, well, it's the classic midlife crisis time kind of a
Hmm.
thing. And I think people that are too attached to their identity and maintaining that, they have a more difficult time with that transit. But I get you're pretty fluid with all the water in your chart. So you
I could join
something
the
like
Amish this week. I could just
what?
sell this thing and I could just sell this and join the Amish next week.
Are you serious? So last question, how do you find time? I mean, well, one question I wrote down is how do you find time to make your awesome music mixes on Spotify? Like
Well,
what talk about music with your inspiration and all that, because I always love your playlists.
thank you. I'm always listening to music. Um, I still go out. You know, I find a lot of energy from going out and listening to music. So I find music like that. Oh, my friends like music. So it's when I was a kid, um, I was just obsessed with music. Um, I would get Rolling Stone and Spin and Circus and these other magazines, and I would download every single song. And I like gave myself a musical education from a very young age. Um, Even going like I remember reading a Nick Hornby novel and like downloading every single song and Nick
Oh,
Hornby
right,
mentioned.
right.
So I I just it comes to me. I just find it. I've been talking about like vibes and vibration, and I think that like music and art and music and fashion, they're not that different, and that it's just it seems the good stuff seems to find me.
Well, it's always surprising because there's a good amount of like high energy like or disco that is in there, which I personally love that kind of thing, but it's a little bit off the beaten path, I think, for most people like listening to stuff nowadays. It, I mean, not high energy or electronic, but you definitely have, this disco vector that
Disco is the shit. Disco is the best. Like good disco is like the best music that's ever made, I think, because disco is electronic music that's soul music and it's like house music and it's church music and it's God music and it's this huge expression of all these different cultures in this like riotous, beautiful way. Like the
I
like,
agree. I Okay, now I'll tell you my favorite disco song, then I'm going to ask you yours.
oh boy.
Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
So mine is Evelyn Champagne King's Shame. If you
Okay.
if you remember that
Oh, of
fucking
course, I know it.
song,
That song's so fucking good.
it just I could be in
Yeah,
the mo I should play it today after my friend died because
you should.
that'll like lift me up like instantly, inescapably. Does one come to mind for you or
I'm gonna have to get back to you. It's like
we'll do, and then I'll tag it in the text that accompanies this interview. I'll say, well, Dan got
I
back
want
to
to
me.
give you
His
I want to
favorite.
give you the right answer.
Hey, Dan, thanks so much for making time today.
My pleasure. My
And
pleasure.
I just sent Mac the new spring column, so he's got that revving
Cool.
up, I hope. And we'll be in touch.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Frederick.